Fantastic. So yes, thank you everybody for joining. Welcome to our very first edition of TCC Talks, which is incredibly exciting. So just to introduce a few people, we have Tom, who is our marketing executive.
Hi guys.
He will be interviewing Nick, who's one of our fabulous freelancers that we have on the books. He is an editor and a motion graphics designer, also dubbed post-production Jedi, I believe, by many, I'm sure. So yes, in a moment, I'll just hand over to Tom, who's going to have a few questions to ask Nick. Nick's going to talk about his career, how he got into motion graphics and editing, and talk about his role in depth, really. And then at the end, we'll have some time for questions. So just a bit of housekeeping. If throughout the talk, basically, you can type your questions into the chat bar at the bottom, and then I'll be monitoring that throughout, and then I'll select a few at the end just to ask Nick. I'll try and pick out some ones that, some things that he hasn't covered perhaps already. And then, yeah, I think everyone has themselves on mute, but just a reminder, if you can mute your microphones, that would be fantastic. And yes, I think we're all ready to go. I'll just also let you know we're recording this session. So if you have your video on, you might want to have it off, because the recordings are then going to sit as a sort of web series on our website. So just to let you all know that, yes, we are recording these events. And yeah, I think that's it. I hope you all enjoy. And yeah, I'll hand it over to Tom now.
Hi guys, we're just going to start off. I'll play Nick's show reel. Hopefully the sound works if technology is on my side today, which has not been so far. So I will kick off with that. Nick, I will just start off with you. That's probably the easiest thing to do. So best place to start then, I guess, is what is your sort of general day-to-day then, really, as a freelancer? Is it sort of as structured as when you're employed, you got a 9 to 5, or how do you go about it?
Yeah, it's completely unstructured for the most part in terms of when I'm working with a brand new client, for example. We may hop onto a Zoom call like this and go through a brief and discuss all of the kind of ideas that they want for their outcome. And we might just go through the storyboard and go through everything that we need to do to deliver the film. So that might start off by kicking off the day like that, and then simply just cracking on with the work in the day. But the great thing with freelancing, as most of you are kind of aware since the pandemic, is we're working from home a lot of the time. Myself, I'm 100% remote now, which is great in a lot of senses because it allows me to kind of structure my day as and when needed. Like we were saying with Laura this at the beginning of this chat, I started off today kind of having breakfast outside, going to the gym. Then technically I would pick up a project first thing in the morning that maybe I acquired the day before, or maybe the Korean company sent one over from the previous week.
So I guess, so you don't work the traditional 9 to 5 in a sense then? So do you often find yourself working into the evening, or do you have a sort of natural shut-off point where you'll just turn off work, or does it depend on sort of the deadline of a project you're working on?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because the 9 to 5 structure, I think it works more so if you're starting out in the industry, because you may need that structure and to kind of take in all of the processes that need to be done to get to, a final video, for example. Whereas what happens with clients now is they tend to have so much trust if they're a repeat client, and I've worked with them for years on end. We kind of know what to expect, and we kind of both agree this is what needs to be done at a set time. So we don't really need to focus on you have to finish by 6 o'clock or by 5 o'clock today. It really is more about the final delivery, the final result. And if that's something that you could finish by lunchtime and you're working on a project or a day rate, usually they're pretty cool with that.
I think the issue is more so for freelancers starting out in the industry, because I suppose now you've had a fair amount of time working, you've learned your schedule, what deadlines you can work to. But when you first get started, I notice a lot of people feel that pressure to sort of impress clients, build up sort of a good rapport, and that can lead to working late hours or getting up early or trying to get things out as quickly as you can. Whereas if you're employed, you sort of have that natural shut off time. So I think it's trying to identify that balance between, getting a project finished and not burning yourself out in the process.
Absolutely. It really is key to kind of keep in mind the deadline and what needs to be done by when. And I think the bits in between of like how you go about your day and how you structure your time as a freelancer is definitely something that's more malleable. That's something that the freelancer can dictate how they kind of manage that day if they want to kind of do errands in the day, but then maybe do a 6-hour power session in a row just to get to the end result. I think it's more about that. It's more about kind of getting to that outcome and getting to that final delivery, rather than, in between how productive you are in waves, or if it's a one strong session.
I guess it's about sort of as well setting a precedent with your clients. I mean, sort of how long, when someone comes to you and says that we need this work doing, will you say that, I mean, it depends on the project size, but what would be your minimum sort of turnaround time before you go, I can't do that?
Yeah, I mean, I always try and say that can't be, I never say it can't be done. I definitely try and reframe that into we're going to find a way to do that. It might be a case of, I could give you a real example. One I had yesterday, I can't say the client's name because we're under an NDA, but we had to quote a pretty big project. Like, this is kind of a 3 to 4 week heavy VFX job. And I originally quoted 5 to 6 weeks, but because of the scope of work and the deadline has to be 3 weeks, we then have to kind of upscale the team to take on other freelancers to just compact more like hands on deck in a shorter time. So again, we're kind of operating on what needs to be achieved really. And then in between that, we try and find a way to make it work.
Yeah, so I guess it's just finding a balance between, what's possible and setting their sort of understanding of what you can do and what you can't do in a time deadline, rather than, just saying yes or no, I can't do that really.
Definitely. I mean, setting expectations is something I learned the hard way, for sure. It's something, one quote I remember when I worked at Apple part-time was under deliver, over promise. And I kind of like that attitude of, under promise, over deliver. That's completely opposite. So to always have that idea in your head of, this is what we can do, but then going above and beyond it if possible.
And it keeps clients coming back if you can live by that sort of mentality, rather than if you do what you first said, you're going to find that you don't get a lot of clients coming back to you.
Yeah, 100%. The other way around is usually a bit dangerous, but if you can try and go above and beyond the call of duty and deliver as much as possible within the time, you're going to be remembered. And that's why clients call you back.
This is why I guess you have such an extensive list of clients and why you've done so well in the industry over the years now. So I guess it's a good segue into sort of how have you gone about building this up? You mentioned that, you've learned the hard way with over-promising or meeting certain deadlines. How have you developed your skills or client management over your time as a freelancer?
Yeah, it's actually quite a long journey. I mean, I've been doing this for 13 years and 100% happy to admit I'm still learning every day, and there's so much I learn from other freelancers and from clients on this journey. And I would probably break this down into 3 categories of skills, which would be personal skills, business skills, and technical skills. So on the personal side, if we start with that, that's really just been through failing quite a lot and learning how to deal with clients and how to communicate and get the best out of the relationship, really, and just learn we're both here to help each other and we both got this common goal. And so just how do we get there? How do we work together to get to that result? And yeah, that was really for a lot of failing. And, I kind of went on a different journey with coaching courses and learning how to be a better communicator, how to build rapport, and things that had nothing to do with film or nothing to do with kind of being creative in that sense. More just about how can you be a better person and how can you understand people better and how can you communicate on a daily basis to your best ability. So that's definitely a personal kind of journey that I'm definitely still going on. The creative side was an interesting one. I done a very mixed degree at uni. It was called Digital Lens and Media, which was a mixed bag of website animation, photography, film, and a bit of audio. So I was a complete kind of generalist in that sense of having a taste of everything. But I only had kind of one After Effects lesson and one Premiere lesson at uni. So I went at home, I downloaded the trial software, had 14 days to kind of really study these programs. And I'd done loads of YouTube tutorials and just played around with the software myself. And then I went a bit deeper and kind of asked other freelancers for tips, went to networking events with Adobe and a few kind of forums that were in London at the time, and just really tried to hone in my craft and practice every day.
So in terms of sort of your learning on the creative side, did you find that you took away more from sort of your own self-learning outside of university, or sort of were you more of a university-based, they explain it to you sort of learning, that hands-on versus sort of the theoretical side of things?
I would definitely say it's for anyone listening, you should try to find out what type of learner you are. And it's definitely not certainly like one type. You might be a combination of 2 or 3 different types. Some people are very visual. Some people are very kinesthetic and they like to kind of experiment and kind of figure things out themselves. Some people like to listen to a podcast or audiobook. For me, I kind of, creative wise, I loved kind of failing and experimenting because there were no repercussions. Like if you're doing it with a client project, probably not the best idea to kind of experiment and go crazy. But with software and, you've always got that kind of undo button. You can just open up a program and experiment and create projects with your friends or family. Everyone has a camera in their pocket. You can go out and film something, cut that footage together, add some effects, some titles, create a promo video for a family member's business. You've got so many options here to experiment with. So that's literally what I done. I made videos with friends and family and found that I learned so much through what worked and what didn't work. But that wasn't necessarily the best for the business side. That's definitely a different process to go through the business side.
And I suppose as you go on, it's a process of constantly learning as you're working. I mean, you're very good at what you do now, but I guess with new technology and new software, it's something that you've constantly got to keep on top of, rather than just going, I'm done now, I don't really need to pick up much more.
Yeah, you've got to stay sharp. You always have to sharpen your skills. Like you said, Tom, the technology is always evolving. Even you could argue the business principles, the way we kind of do business and get to a result, is more or less the same. And people and relationships are always consistent. That's something that hasn't evolved too much. So technology is definitely something you have to stay on top of your craft and really sharpen your skill set.
Yeah, I mean, even briefly touching from a marketing perspective, I'd learned InDesign, and then I found that InDesign has become less relevant as time goes on, and you just got to go with the flow with these sort of things, really. But and then I guess the last side of sort of how you've honed your skills is sort of more from a business perspective. I know we've touched on before, but for everyone else, it's you've now become your own marketing team and your own sort of admin team, and you've got to manage every aspect of the business now, rather than just, doing your job, which is editing.
Absolutely. I think that with business and freelancing as well, something that you don't necessarily get told in any course necessarily is that you are a business. Of course you are a freelancer, but you are your individual brand. So everything that sits within that, whether that's marketing or doing the accounts or doing the kind of client acquisition side or doing the actual physical work, you are kind of in charge of all of that. And I know me and myself and Tom had a chat last week, and it's about identifying what you may be not as strong at and maybe outsourcing some of that. For me, I'm not the best with social media and copywriting, so I've now slowly started to kind of outsource my SEO side and the marketing content. Maybe I need to hire Tom, but there's definitely people that may be better at those skills. I'm not poaching. Yeah, yeah, definitely identify that.
You touched on a good point in terms of it's about figuring out what your strengths are and putting your time into that, and then finding other people that can only advance what you're doing. I mean, even in my own job, I'll find that I'm better at the creative content copywriting side, and that when it comes to digital aspects, it's better just going to someone who knows it better, because you're better putting your own time into what you're good at. And that's not improving your skills, but I think it's figuring out where you're better placed.
100% agree with that, Tom. I think that utilization and identifying first, what am I best at and where is my time best spent? It's not only by you kind of doing tasks like marketing, if you're not as strong in marketing, that's taken away from the jobs that you are potentially good at. So because you're one person, unfortunately, we haven't invented a way to split yourself in 2 or 3. You kind of have to be very careful and very clever about how you place yourself in the company, and use your strengths to the best ability, and just bring on other people that might be able to help you with that.
Yeah. So I guess we should probably move to the next one. Sorry, I'm just conscious of time. I could talk to you about that for ages.
I know.
So I guess you started, how did you go from sort of, working in the industry to deciding this is what I want to do, freelance is what I'm going to do full time, I'm not going to be doing anything else, I want to just work for myself?
I'd say it wasn't a conscious effort. In hindsight, I didn't know what freelancing was. I didn't know the term. I just knew that I wanted to be creative when I came out of uni. And I also knew that I didn't want to work in an office 9 to 5 for the same company. That was something I was so sure. And I really, obviously years later, it's quite easy to connect the dots looking back, but I realized my biggest value was freedom and creativity. So I only knew through looking at what everyone else does when they find a problem in life. I Googled freelance jobs, or at that time it was kind of video jobs or animation jobs when I finished uni. And I found that you could kind of hop onto a project as and when you like. So that way you kind of had the freedom to kind of do a short film that weekend and then work on a commercial the following week for like 2 or 3 days and have the rest as holiday. And I thought that was such a cool way.
It keeps it fresh in a way, where some people sort of like the structure of being employed and knowing how each day's going to go and that they can comfortably know they can do this and that. I suppose with you working freelance, you don't ever know what your next project's going to be 2-3 months down the line. I mean, you might if it's quite a big project, but in terms of what am I going to be working on and what sort of companies and clients am I going to get to work with, sort of up and down the scale of size, it must lead to a sort of more interesting perspective on what is today going to bring.
Yeah, I think you have to be a certain personality type for freelancing. I really think there's certain people more inclined for full-time, and there's certain people that are definitely more suited to freelance. And for me, I really, it might sound strange to say, but I thrive on that kind of, that unknown. I like that kind of element of variety. Although it comes with risk, there's a way to mitigate that risk with, amazing brands and companies like yourself, that's the Korean company that outsource work for you and do all the pitching and bring a client to you. And you've pre-qualified and done all that hard work to ensure that you will get consistent work. So you could kind of definitely cut down those barriers.
I think the risk is worth it in a sense. If you said, if you are that sort of personality type that craves sort of not knowing what you're going to be doing, not knowing what you're going to be doing, but working on a different project every day and something that you love. So I think if that's sort of the personality type you have, it's something you should definitely pursue. Whereas for me, I like to know what I'm doing structured wise, so I can plan sort of months and months in advance. But I know a lot of people that don't like working like that. They don't particularly enjoy that sort of structure. They don't enjoy the Monday to Friday 9 to 5.
Yeah, I totally hear that as well. And I really understand that everyone has different kind of priorities in life. And of course, we're all made up of different values and beliefs. So if you value structure over maybe variety or a potentially, you could take the same aspect with salary. Whereas a freelancer, it's someone could say to you, you could earn £200,000 a year freelancing as an editor, or we can guarantee you'll get 50 grand every day. You could take these kind of elements of risk and variety and values across freelancing and full time, and really orientate it towards your personality and what you enjoy.
I think you've hit the nail on the head in that sense. It's about deciding who you are as a person rather than going, oh, I can make 500 grand a year as a freelancer or 100 employed. It's about going, what path do I like? Do I want that sort of freedom aspect, or do I like the sort of more secure side of things? But I think you can build security in as a freelancer. That's not what I'm saying. It's more so about deciding how you like to work.
Yeah, you've made me spark a thought. Sorry to interrupt the next slide, but I really like what you said, because it's that thing of putting your personality first and then putting it into different roles, which is what you get to do as a freelancer. Whereas not to offend kind of full time, because I think full time's an amazing path to take, and it's definitely suited for a lot of people. But you tend to kind of have a company and a format that's already built, and then it's then taking personalities and putting it into that already existing culture. Whereas freelancing, you get to kind of craft that and have a bit more ownership over that.
I guess it's interesting, really. It's just it's something that I think a lot of people stress about figuring out early on, where it's something you can develop as you go on over time. A lot of people go from employed to freelance, or decide, start their own business and then go, this actually isn't something for me. I don't like having to do multiple aspects of the role. So I think it's something that you can go back and forth with, and you don't have to decide, if you're in university, I'm going to do this straight away afterwards.
Totally.
Yeah. So then I guess, in your career, I mean, we've touched on it a little bit already, what is your sort of biggest obstacle you've had, whether that's sort of financially or getting set up now with social media or whatever it may be that we've not touched on?
Certainly, if we're talking in the past, I definitely had different obstacles then than what I do have now. They're almost the complete polar opposite now. But in the beginning, I think the two biggest challenges I faced, and I'm sure a lot of freelancers face, is one, getting paid on time, and chasing invoices and learning how to have the quote unquote money conversation. Those were things I was so awkward with, and I had no idea like how to bring this up. And, oh, are you going to pay this invoice, or, how much to charge? Well, massive kind of issues embedded in there. And they kind of got overcome through a lot of practice and unfortunately being burnt as a freelancer and not being paid for months. But there's ways to overcome that. And again, the current company do solve that problem with your kind of guaranteed payment that you have with your clients. So that's a fantastic kind of option that freelancers like myself are so grateful for. And the second issue, I'd say, it was really kind of getting consistent clients, getting consistent work coming in where, there might have been days or weeks on end without any work in the beginning. And that's quite a scary place to be for a freelancer. But again, this is overcome with, having a talent agent or having multiple sources of client acquisition, where you kind of work with inbound and outbound marketing. And rather than wait for everyone to come to you, which is what I was doing, I then kind of developed this system to kind of reach out to other clients a lot easier. And it's definitely paid off over the years.
You've touched on something that I wanted to ask you, and it's something that I've struggled with when I've worked freelance in the past, and I think a lot of people would when you first set out, is sort of setting your day rate and knowing what you're worth, really, because it's one thing to sort of have an hourly rate when you're employed, but then to try and extrapolate that into when I work freelance, going, oh, I'll ask for this much, and you're like, oh, I don't want to ask for that, I don't want to offend the client. But then if you'd have gone in with a much higher number, they probably would have just paid it in the first place. So how do you go about, where do you see yourself at the start?
Yeah, this is a huge topic. We talk hours just on this alone, but the idea is you kind of have to gauge roughly where the market is, as in where does your skill set lie within the rest of the market value. So if you're a junior video editor, you've come straight out of uni, maybe you've got 6 months on your show reel, and you've worked with maybe 2 or 3 clients, you're going to be sitting in a certain ballpark for that. And there's a lot of research out there for day rates. I've even built that into one of these tools that I've created, which allows you to kind of price yourself as a freelancer based on the amount of years experience you have and the amount of days that you work on a project. So you could definitely use that kind of market research that's out there and also line it into who you're talking to. So there's a quote by Blair Enns, which is quote the client, not the job, which essentially means that you should quote based on who you're talking to and who you're working with. Because if you charged Nike £500 for a shoe commercial, they'll probably be pretty offended if you're going to be editing the video for them. So you definitely have to kind of price it in line with the client as well.
I guess that's difficult for a lot of people sort of starting out at the beginning, is it's so many factors to consider with what's my worth, how much are you actually going to be able to afford, how much work am I going to be able to put in, how quickly can I get it done. Because I know from the past where I've quoted someone for 2 days when I've done some work, you then go, this is actually going to take me more than 2 days, and what I thought was a really good take home is now actually diminishing the more time I spend on this.
Yeah, I mean, you've touched on such a big point, which is how much is your time worth? And that's something I think a lot of freelancers listening should really think about, and think that if I was to say no to this job, what is my price worth to have that time off? And how much is this really valued to me? Like, how much do I deem this value for my time to dedicate on this project?
I think it's difficult, but as you said, I think it's something you learn as you go along, and most people will have to experience a little bit of rough before smooth. Right, I'll touch on one last point because I'm conscious we've been going for half an hour and I want to get in the questions. So, sort of as a take home for anyone either looking to get into the industry or looking to swap to working freelance or whatever it may be, what is your sort of key advice that you could give people?
There's it's a great question, but there's so much we can draw from this. But I'll try and be quick as possible. So one of the key things I would really love freelancers to do is to ask themselves, it's really about discovering yourself. What do you enjoy and what are you so good at that you can help other people with your creative skill set? And the way you can do this is a simple exercise. You could ask yourself 4 questions. You can ask yourself, firstly, what am I extremely passionate about and why? You could ask yourself, what am I extremely good at, which could be your skill set? What problems does this skill set solve? And lastly, who needs these problems solved? And what I think that kind of those 4 questions do is it ties in the kind of how, what, and why, and who it's for. So if you're an extremely good graphic designer that solves problems for maybe small charities, that helps them to get their brand across, to get more clients, or to help to get more people to reach out to that client and that charity, and you've got a really powerful meaning impact behind that, you've really touched on a big motivator to why you get out of bed in the morning. And also it will allow you to then niche down into the market and communicate your message very clearly to your clients, because you know what you're about and they know what you're about. So I'd really spend time working on those 4 questions and those answers, and that should be able to guide you to getting your ideal client.
I think Tom might have frozen. Okay, just while we're waiting for Tom to come back, Nick, you were just I was just listening to you there talk about your talking about your rates and how tricky it is to have those conversations with new clients. I guess obviously it's hard to give specific rates and what freelancers starting out should be charging, but maybe you could give a sort of rough idea of a kind of a rate for an editor, a motion graphics designer just starting out at that level, and also when you think is a good time to start increasing that rate, and also if you get asked about that, if you get questioned on that by perhaps someone you've worked with before, and they say, oh, why are you putting your rates up, kind of what you would say to that client, maybe. Sorry, I think that's like 3 questions in one.
No, it's great. It's a big topic, isn't it? And again, there's no rule book for this really. So yeah, in terms of the first question, in terms of starting rates, it would definitely come down to your experience, but assuming you're a junior editor / motion graphics artist, you would be anywhere between the kind of £250 to £350 range. Again, I've got kind of like exact numbers of this inside this tool. And with that, if you do get pushback from clients, or, maybe you're working with a repeat client and they then look to ask you, we've got this new gig on, we'd love to have you on board. But you haven't worked with them maybe in a few months now, and you then have to kind of pitch a new day rate. It's a bit of a tough thing to do. It's quite intimidating for people. But the way you kind of justify that in a sense is with your, any new skill sets that you've obtained before that time, any new experience that you've had as well. Maybe you can showcase new projects that you've been working on, and you've now acquired these awesome new skills that make you even more valuable or more efficient. You're able to deliver to a higher standard. You'll produce higher quality work. All of these things, along with any certifications you might have done, or maybe you've won an award, these things kind of pack into your pricing. And it's the same with many service industries. It's just taking those same principles and allowing you to kind of pack that into your price.
Amazing. I think that's really great advice. Thank you, Nick. And then I think we might have Tom back, but I just had another question.
Yeah, sorry,
as well.
our internet has been
oh, you're back.
It's just fantastic. It adds to the long list of problems today.
I was just also going to say on that, Nick, if our sort of junior people starting out get asked perhaps to work just for the experience and for no fee, I guess it's quite a controversial topic, and it might be a sort of case-by-case situation, but I just wondered what your thoughts were on that, if it's something that you would encourage people to do when they're just starting out, so they get the experience, or what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up, Amy, because you're totally right to say there's a lot of mixed opinions and controversy on this. Um, I'm more than happy to admit that when I started out, I worked for free for a long time. And that was really because I came out of uni with a showreel I made that summer with just made up kind of work, just kind of skateboarding videos of friends and, work I was making from scratch with animations and motion graphics. And I really wanted client work or just that experience on my showreel and to have that kind of visceral experience of working with a client that I offered my services for free because that was more valuable to me at the time. And I would encourage people, it will also test your passion as well. Like if you really are motivated and love doing your craft, then, money's not necessarily an object for that. Of course, I totally appreciate not everyone is in the same situation. And of course, money may be a big object for that. But starting out, if this is your dream, I would highly recommend do some free gigs for your local shops, for family members, for friends. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit you can do there to get the experience and get it on your portfolio.
Amazing. Thank you, Nick. Tom, how are you doing?
Yeah, good. I've just swapped to mobile data because I've got a text from my internet company telling me it's been shut off now for the next couple of hours. So that's just fantastic.
Oh, well, bad things happen in three, so I'll wait for the next thing to go wrong.
No, please God, no. I really hope not. Yeah, good. I think I've just got maybe one or two questions, and then that pretty much covers a lot of it. So it's really the lighter side of things now. So I will hopefully play your show reel at the end, Nick, but you've worked with some pretty amazing clients from my perspective, a lot of sort of fashion-based ones. But who's been sort of your most enjoyable client experience to work with, or what project's been your favorite?
Yeah, it's a very tough one because it's like your children and picking your favorite child. But I definitely have a few the ones that are at the top of my list. I mean, Adidas, for one, I've been working with them with a number of agencies for years, and I really love the kind of creative license they give me to add my own input into their projects. I think that's so nice to kind of be respected as an artist, to kind of see a rough storyboard or a rough brief, but then you're able to throw ideas into that and influence the final product. And that's always really cool. And even last week over Christmas, one of the Adidas commercials was in the store as we were walking by in Brick Lane. And it was like so cool to see it in situ and realize like, oh yeah, I remember having that suggestion or that shot, kind of tweaked it in this way or graded it in a certain way. I thought that was really cool. So that's probably one of the projects that stands out in my mind, especially recently.
That's yeah. I suppose it's difficult to sort of, when you've worked with so many different brands, highlight sort of your favorite one. I guess then the only follow-up I have is what is your favorite sort of client to with, where you've got complete freedom or where you're sort of told this is the sort of thing we'd like?
Definitely the first option. Yeah. I mean, it's quite good to have something being told to you where, you're being directed because this is our vision and this is what we want to make happen. If it's a fantastic idea and you believe in it as an artist, I'm all for that as well. But equally, as an artist, you kind of want to push yourself and push your creative skill set as well. So if there's a way to find the balance of two, of having a strong, structured idea that has a great narrative and great meaning behind it, but then you can add in your own creative spice to it and all your little ingredients over the top, I think that's a nice, healthy balance between the two.
I suppose when you've been working sort of for this long now and you've got sort of an extensive background, clients will be more willing to trust you, or there'll be repeat clients that are coming back and they'll know what your working style is. So they'll want more of your input into whatever project it is that they're working on.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, starting out, I was definitely like a yes man and just, yep, I'll cut that. Is that how you want it? Cool. I'll push the magic buttons. But now it's great to have that kind of advisory role as well, and being able to recommend best workflows and best ways to go around the project.
Yeah. I'm just going to wrap it there, unfortunately, for my side of things, just because I'm looking at the time. So, Amy, if you have any sort of questions yourself or the team or anyone else, if you want to.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I don't think we've had any questions come through. So if anyone would like to ask questions now, then the floor is yours, or you can type into the chat bar. It's totally up to you. Oh, here we go. Nathaniel would like to know, how does tax work in regards to being a freelancer? So Nick, do you want to?
Yeah. To be very clear, I'm definitely not an accountant, but tax is very much applicable for the country that you're working in. So assuming the question came from the UK, I would always recommend to speak to a professional in accounting for this. But the general rule is but below a certain amount, you'd get a 20% tax on profit. So it's not necessarily how much you're bringing in that whole year. As a freelancer, you also have what are called expenses, so business expenses. So if you were to make, say, for example, 100 grand that year, but you spent 50 grand on a shiny new laptop and a camera and tripods and lights, which are pretty expensive lights if you're paying 50 grand for that you'd only be taxed on the profit, which would be the remaining 50%, £50,000 on that. But there's certainly a lot you could go into with taxes and freelancing. So certainly when we have a larger amount of time, we could definitely go into more detail.
Amazing. Thank you, Nick. Any more questions? Oh, here we go. Alexandra, what is the best way to build clients? Finding directors/producers online that you would like to work with and maybe ask to meet for a coffee. Yeah, so I guess how you sort of went out there to find people you wanted to work with.
Yeah, that's a great question, because there are so many ways to acquire new clients. So yeah, thanks for the question, Alexandra, because I like the idea of going for a coffee. I think that's such a nice way to humanize things. And remember, we're not robots, we're dealing with people, and we all have our own lives and schedules. But there's times where I've met up for someone with a coffee because they sent an email out, which was a cold email. I've never heard from this person before. And they just wanted advice about freelancing, or they liked the showreel and wanted to work together. And they were a producer and they were looking to build their list up. And it was just such a nice way that even if nothing comes from it, it's just about reaching out to someone and having good intentions. And if you are doing this through email, I would definitely try to make it clear as possible what the intention of the email is, that you're looking to have a coffee and just connect with other creatives because you're a freelance video editor and you're looking to grow your client base. And I thought it would be really cool because I really enjoyed your work. You know, something along the lines of that intention. You can phrase it however you like, but just definitely make it clear about what the intention of that meeting is, and try and do some research on the person you're contacting. That's very key.
Amazing. Yeah, I think it's so important, isn't it, Nick, to strike a balance with a cold email, because you don't want to be too over familiar, obviously, because you're emailing that person out of the blue, but then and you don't want to waffle on too much as well. So you just, yeah, I think that's really great advice. Just explain exactly what it is you're after, and just sort of be kind of authentic with that and your reasons behind it. Fantastic. No problem, Alexandra. All right, so unless we've got any other questions, I think we'll leave it there. So yeah, thank you to everybody for joining today. And yeah, sorry we've had a few technical hiccups, but that's always going to happen with the first event. And like I said, we are recording these and we will aim to put them on our website. And of course, if you guys have any more questions, even when you're come to watch this on catch up, perhaps, obviously feel free to get in touch and with, the Crewing Company or Nick, and I'm sure we'll be able to come back to you with any more advice. And yeah, thank you all so much for joining. And yes, please share the love, spread the word. We're going to be running these on the last Tuesday of every month with a different freelancer. We'll try aim to mix it up and get a mix of different roles. And yeah, so we'd love you all to join again soon. So thank you all. And yeah, goodbye from us.